Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. Bill Curdy is back in the studio. I'm Paul Thomas here. And welcome back, Bill, and everybody's fighting the cold somewhere or somehow, some way.
I don't think I've ever seen it like this, Paul. It's just been, if you haven't gotten anything, you're very fortunate because most people have something, either the flu or a gastrointestinal bug or something out there, because the amount of people that are really somehow connected with this virus that's going around is just unbelievable. We're still giving flu shots. I may have to order again. I see the health department has got a clinic, I think, going on the 30th, where they're going to give flu shots and a donation of $2. I guess we're, if you have your insurance, most insurances still pay for it. We're still giving flu shots every day. Just remember, it takes you for 10 days to 2 weeks to get immunity, and then if they hit it, you've a third of your condition is probably taken care of, and then the two-thirds, you're only two-thirds as sick as you could be because it's only 32% effective. So
I got a question about that because my family was going to go in late last week, and get our flu shots. We haven't done it yet. And then everybody got sick over the weekend, and my wife was saying, well, now we can't go get our flu shots because we're sick. Is that true? Or?
If you don't have a fever,
yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
So, you know, any kind of, unless your immune system is compromised by HIV or something similar to that, you're okay. So, no, just because you're sneezing or even vomiting, some of the flu that's going around is gastrointestinal, but most people, if they do get a fever, it's over in a day.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of what's happening with our family is it's the gastrointestinal thing, and it's like one day and done. But unfortunately, it started last week and then carried through the weekend, and and it's like it's gone through every one of us, and hopefully we don't get it again, and recycle through. But yeah, that's good to know that if as long as we don't have a fever, we can come down and get that flu shot. And
I haven't seen a repetition of this gastrointestinal thing. Most people get it, they're over it in 2 or 3 days, and if they run a fever, it's for a short period of time. Next year, we're actually going to be able, I think, to test for the flu when people come in. So if that transpires, which I think it will, we'll be able to diagnose it ahead of time and get you that flu shot, even though you don't realize that you've got the flu. So there's all kinds of things going on in healthcare, and I keep thinking that it isn't going to be, this isn't going to be a flu week, and it always turns up being that way because of the amount of fatalities. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. One of the basic things we're going to talk about right now, and we'll be repeating in the next few weeks, is managing your prescriptions every month. And I know that can be a headache if you're elderly and you have 4 or 5 different diagnoses and several different kind of medications, and they all come due at a separate time, and you're making multiple trips to the pharmacy, or we're making, instead of delivering to you once a week or once a month, we're delivering to you 3 or 4 days out of a week. You're running out of medication, you're waiting for refills from the doctor's office. These kind of problems are going to escalate as healthcare continues to deteriorate. So fortunately, Northlake Medical Pharmacy is going to start a Simplify Your Meds program in February. Between your work and your family and your retirement, you don't have time to worry about refilling your prescriptions. We're going to start doing that for you. It's going to be a gradual process that we start in February, and eventually we will get around to all of you, so all your medications are synced. They're all filled the same day. There will be some controlled substances that won't fall into that category, but there will be most of your things for respiratory conditions, for diabetes, for obesity, for many of those diseases that have multiple medications for them. We'll be able to handle that for you and have them all filled together. That's no problem for your insurance. If it is, we try to get the prior authorizations ahead of time and get it taken care of. And we're going to start doing that again in the 1st of February, and it's going to take us some time to get our entire field on that. You wonder sometimes about these accidental drug dosages, and I took this off the internet yesterday. It was on, excuse me, it was in the New York Times, and it was on CNN, which neither one of my favorite newspapers or cable television, but Tom Petty of the Heartbreakers died, I think, in October of an accidental overdose. And although we suspected that's what it was, we had no idea how encompassing it was. So there was a news release from the LA County Medical Examiner last Friday, and the statement, which was posted on Facebook, said that Petty, 66, has suffered several ailments before excuse me, his October 2 death. He had a very bad hip. In fact, by the time he was into this, trying to stop the pain, his hip was already broken. But despite that injury, he insisted on keeping his commitment to his fans and toured for 53 dates with a fractured hip. And as he did it, he worsened to a more serious injury. The day he died, he was informed his hip had graduated to a full-on break, and it's our feeling that the pain was simply unbearable and was a cause for his overuse of medication. However, I can understand that if he was getting strictly medication that was authorized by the Food and Drug Administration. But the medical examiner's news release said the autopsy found these drugs were in Petty's system. Fentanyl, which we know is a huge drug of abuse and is linked with heroin and oxycodone and those kind of things. So fentanyl was in his system, oxycodone was in his system, acetylfentanyl was in his system, which is 15 times more potent than morphine and is not a FDA-approved drug. It had to come from the street. Despropionyl fentanyl, which is 80 times more potent than morphine. Then temazepam, which is Restoril, which is a sleeping medication. Alprazolam, which is a depressant for anxiety, and citalopram, which is an antidepressant. All of those were in his system. The cause of death was multisystem organ failure due to resuscitated cardiopulmonary arrest due to mixed drug toxicity. The manner of death was accident. He also suffered from coronary artery disease, arteriosclerosis, and emphysema. Acetylfentanyl has not been approved for medical use in the United States, and there are no published studies of fentanyl on safety for safety in human use. It is classified as a Schedule I drug. Fentanyl has created a national health care crisis, has previously struck the music world. We know Prince died of fentanyl. Petty collapsed at his home in Malibu and was taken to UCLA, where he died, attributed to death by cardiac failure.
So my question, because I read that article as well, or saw that article as well, and I wasn't I wasn't aware that fentanyl was not a prescribed drug.
Well, fentanyl is.
Fentanyl is.
Just plain fentanyl.
Okay.
And that's under the trade name of Duragesic, and it's a patch that you use for 72 hours, and it's it's never supposed to be prescribed unless you're opiate tolerant. You've been on opium drugs before, And the purpose of this was so you wouldn't have to take pills like oxycodone, and this patch would last for 72 hours.
Okay.
Then they started using the patch more than often than every 72 hours and as often as every 12 hours. Then they started, I'll never forget, I was doing skilled nursing centers, and every 30 days or so we would have to destroy narcotics because they were a hazardous use for people for addictions. And fentanyl only came in those patches. So I would squeeze, and it's a gel, I would squeeze the fentanyl out of the patch, and we'd throw that in the incinerator, and we'd throw the empty packages in a bag and put them in the dumpster. There actually was an employee that was going into the dumpster, taking those envelopes or packages that had the fentanyl in them, and with a syringe sucking out any kind of that gel they could and injecting it.
Wow.
And there's actually 8 forms of fentanyl that's on the market, but not on the legitimate market. Back in the mid-2000s, it was linked to a slew of overdose deaths across the United States. The crisis still continues. The drug, which is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
That's crazy.
We've had people in this county that I know that have died of fentanyl overdose. It's not detected in standard narcotic toxicology screens, and I'm not sure why that is. It can also be hard to identify in the field as fentanyl in its powdered form, which has never been okayed by the Food and Drug Administration, is cut with heroin and cocaine. So first responders, knowing that signs of fentanyl overdose is imperative. As an opiate, fentanyl affects the part of the brain that controls breathing, so failure to recognize an overdose can result in respiratory failure, respiratory arrest, or death.
Wow.
This acetylfentanyl is an opiate analgesic that's an analog of fentanyl, and it is to be 15 times more potent than morphine. It has never been licensed for medical use, and instead only been sold as a designer drug. Was discovered at the same time as fentanyl and had only rarely been encountered in the illicit market in the late 80s. However, in 2013, Canadian police seized 3 kilograms of acetylfentanyl as its opiate receptor agonist. It may serve as a direct substitute for heroin or other opiates. It is illegal in that form. 3 forms of illegal fentanyl that are out there are spiked blotter paper. If you're familiar with acid, acid was probably before your time, Paul.
Oh, I think when I was a teenager, I heard it was around. Yeah.
Well, it came in these little blotters, and they would little cartoon characters, and they would take them and put them on their tongue or on their skin, and it would absorb, and you'd have if you were lucky, you'd have a fantastic hallucinogenic trip. If you weren't lucky, you would end up in a nursing home for the rest of your life. So medical applications hold a tablet or a lozenge under their tongue and their cheek, and then it's absorbed through the mucous membrane. Oral sprays are absorbed the same way. When using a patch, it absorbs through their skin. But the 3 forms that are illegal are spiked blotter paper, manufactured tablets, which are illegal, and powder. Usually abusers get fentanyl from illegal manufacturers. Often heroin abusers seek out fentanyl as a substitute to alleviate the side effects of heroin withdrawal. Heroin or cocaine users may also take it without knowing, as it will be substituted in some of the powders and increase the potency. So illegal manufacturers may also use this powder to create tablets that are meant to mimic other opiates. On the street, fentanyl lozenges are often referred to as lollipops. These fentanyl lollipops have been illegally obtained and often found at the end of a small stick. Street names include Apache, China Girl, China White, Dance Fever, Friend, Goodfella, Jackpot, Murder 8, TNT, and Tango and Cash.
Wow.
So
Some creative names
Yeah.
there.
only your son could remember all
Wow.
of these names.
So, is fentanyl also what Michael Jackson died of?
I'm not sure. He had so many opiates in his system
Yeah.
that it's kind of like Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, but probably.
Yeah. My wife was saying she thought that that's what Michael Jackson had died of, an overdose of fentanyl, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, well, the side effects include nausea, vomiting, itching, difficult breathing, drowsiness. Those side effects are associated with heroin use as well. It is suspected to be on lookout for signs that fentanyl may be involved with a lot of these Hollywood-type deaths. If a patient has used fentanyl with the patch, it's important to note that the drug may take some time to reach the peak concentration. We tell people that are using, and these are usually terminal cancer patients or terminal or chronic pain people that need this, and my sister was on this for a hip disfigurement that she was born with for probably 4 or 5 years. She's off of it now, and she just takes ibuprofen and Tylenol. But when we dispense Duragesic patches, we tell people give it at least 72 hours to work to its full capacity. So that first patch you put on is not going to get to its full capacity for the total of 72 hours. It's going to peak out at about 48 hours and then kind of diffuse because the blood level of it isn't the same as it starts to mellow out. So if you suspect somebody is on fentanyl, remember it's an opiate. The signs of fentanyl overdoses are just like those of heroin. They may have bluish nails or lips in addition to difficulty in breathing, remaining conscious or speaking. Unlike other opiates, fentanyl has a relatively little effect on heart function. This is all more or less the respiratory system. Because it's so potent, overdose patients often need multiple applications of Narcan or naloxone. So first responders estimating even appropriate dosage is difficult. It's often laced with other drugs which will contain other impurities, and knowing the dosages used in the medical application may provide a useful perspective. The lollipops come in 6 different doses. I'm probably giving you more information than you really want here, but 200, 400, 600, 800, 1200, and 1600 milligram. The half-life varies, but it can be up to 12 hours. I had a person call me on Monday that was interviewing for a job and had taken oxycodone the day before, and she wondered if being tested for oxycodone for narcotics would show up on a drug test that she took, and she'd taken oxycodone the day before. Even though the half-life of that drug is relatively short, probably 12 hours, for 1 to 3 hours that drug shows up on a drug test. Now we're talking about oxycodone. Fentanyl is even worse, but generally the half-life varies, but is generally around 17 hours. By injection, it has significantly a lower half-life of around 3.7 hours, and it's worth noting that even in medical applications, it's only prescribed to people who have taken opiates before, because it's so potent. You have to have a tolerance of opium. So when you're out on the street and somebody tells you they've got oxycodone or cocaine or heroin from you, one of the first questions you need to ask is, does it have fentanyl in it? Now, not that the people you buy it from is going to tell you that it does if it's in there, but it's a possibility, and one that is always a safe question to ask. If there's any other safe questions to ask, I'm not sure. Back on the flu a little bit, I've wondered, and we've talked about it here, that people and excuse me, our number is 263-5252 if you have a question for us. We've had such few people call that and I know many of you listen but don't call, but if you do have a question, 263-5252. We reported last week and the week before, and especially at the beginning of the flu season, where especially healthy people have died within 24 hours of being diagnosed with the flu. A 10-year-old in Connecticut died, so did a 21-year-old bodybuilder and a 4-year-old in Dayton, Ohio. These aren't the usual sick and elderly people who die from influenza, but every year flu carries away perfectly healthy young adults and children and tens of thousands of people over 65. And why is it happening? And I wasn't sure why particularly healthy people would die so young. But when the health practitioners study the immune response, said there are three main reasons. Co-infection with another germ at the same time. So not only do you have flu, you may have pneumonia, or you may have another disease that's existing at the same time. Sometimes bacteria such as strep, aggravation of existing conditions such as heart disease and asthma, and a so-called cytokine storm marked by an overwhelming immune system in response to infection. Now, I'm used to what cytokines are. I won't explain it because it's a little complicated, but that can happen very fast. Back in, I think it was 1918, when the Spanish flu pandemic that killed up to 50 million people a century ago, many people were reported to have died within hours of showing those first symptoms. And you would think whatever would have caused this, that we would have resolved that by this point in our life. Researchers who have gone back and re-examined the tissue samples and read reports from that time believes that most deaths were caused by co-infection with another germ. But many of the healthy young men and women who died quickly of flu that year were more likely succumbed to these cytokine storms. Our immune system, our human immune system, has a whole bunch of weapons to throw out infections, including these cytokines produced by a variety of immune system cells. Those substances work to keep the virus from spreading, and they cause the typical flu-like symptoms that bring misery from flu and other infections. The muscle aches like you get, the fever, all of that is the result of the immune system responding to the virus. Remember when we said last week that coughing is a reason to get something out of your body that coughing is a reflex to get rid of a foreign substance or something unusual. We talked about sneezing. An allergen gets in your system, and the sneeze is an attempt to get rid of that. Your body immune system takes over when there's infections and those kind of things trying to help you. So many diseases cause very similar symptoms, and that's why it's difficult to tell if maybe there's another invader that might be to blame. People have differently composed immune system. Some people will come in and they will say, I was taking this drug and it didn't have any effect on me, and it really belongs to my neighbor. It could be a prescription drug, and it's not working for me. Well, the first lecture I give the patient is never, ever, ever, ever use somebody else's medication. Why? You may have a response to that medication that's an allergy. You don't know what's in that medication. You don't know where they got it. You don't know how it was stored. You don't know exactly what it is. But different people have different composed immune system, and in certain individuals that can be very pronounced immune response, and that can result in a lot of damage to good cells in your body, including the cells in your respiratory tract or your breathing. When a virus is new, like the 1918 strain of H1N1 and the 2009 H1N1 swine flu that the government sent us flu vaccines to vaccinate everybody, it usually kills far more people. One theory is that the immune system can be overwhelmed by the never-before-seen invader, a new type of bacteria strain or virus, and send so many troops to fight it that perfectly healthy tissues in the lungs and other organs get killed too. The people who died from bird flu viruses, such as H5N1 or H7H9, also seem to die of an overdose of the top immune response. So here we have these newer viruses, and they also tend to kill younger people, perhaps because the older population may have been exposed to a distant relative of virus in the past. The H1N1, H2N1, there's all kinds of different strains. Even a partial strain is enough to sensitize your body sometimes to the fact that all of your immune system responses won't react at some time. Now, it's just the part of the annual flu mix, and while it's circulating and killing some people this year, it's the H3N2 strain. Again, I don't expect you to remember this, but that's suspected of causing most problems this time around. And one experiment showed that new genes in these never-before-seen viruses help them thrive deep into the lungs, which can cause pneumonia and might provoke an overwhelming immune response. And that happened to a member of my family. And the lungs got so filled up full of mucus that they almost didn't survive. The survival was from vomiting all that mucus out of the lungs and allowed air to go in those lungs instead of mucus. While a few people seem to die within hours or days, other people, the flu can cause lingering sickness. They become susceptible to other infections, such as strep or staph or bacterial infections. You will notice when your body is fighting off cancer, your body is fighting off pneumonia, your body is fighting off a skin infection that's severe. All of the activities in your body, in your immune system, go to fight that disease. So when that disease is, those bacteria or those viruses are overwhelmed, then all of those things start kicking in. So when you become susceptible to those other infections and you still have the flu going on, that's when people are dying. And those secondary infections can damage organs, cause pneumonia, get into the bloodstream, causing another kind of immune system overreaction. That's called sepsis. That's very, very possible, and that can be very life-threatening. So far this season, the flu has killed over 20 children. Last season, 110 died from influenza in the U.S. The Center for Disease Control doesn't precisely count adult flu deaths in no small part because it just kills too many every year. Every year, the flu in the United States kills 12,000 to 56,000 people and sends as many as 700,000 to the hospital. They estimate flu deaths by looking at how many more people than usual died of flu and pneumonia, but even those calculations miss people who have died from the flu, such as a heart attack or set off by a bout of the flu, or people with asthma or other lung conditions. So it's just one more problem for the lungs to cope with. If you already have breathing difficulties, and I was talking to a patient the other day that just had come in and found out that she now had asthma, and it was just one more problem for her to deal with because she had flu at the same time. If you're already having breathing difficulties, it can put you into a spiral very quickly, and that's when your breathing gets compromised. People that have diabetes already have a damaged immune response, so they also are more susceptible to the flu. One of the things that our questionnaire for giving flu vaccine says, have you had any kind of blood transfusion, radiation, or been had any cancer therapy in the last 6 months. Now, there are oncologists that want us to give you the flu vaccine, even though the literature says be careful about anybody that has a cautioned or a small immune impairment. So pregnant women have double the risk. Pregnant women are in a state of immunosuppression because the immune system is trying not to reject the fetus. I bet most of you never really thought of that. And that's why we give pregnant women a flu shot. Their lungs are compressed by the fetus, so they have less breathing capacity. Humans need a certain level of oxygen, and if blood oxygen levels fall too far, they enter a state of hypoxia or low oxygen, and that can cause damage failure within minutes. And that's why that bluish skin or difficult breathing is an emergency that requires immediate medical care. The best defense against the flu, and other health experts agree, is the flu vaccine. Just about everyone over the age of 6 months should get one, and it's still not too late. Flu is spread by droplets that can linger on surfaces such as countertops, which is why hand washing is so important. It also spreads sneezing and coughing, and perhaps may float in the air on tiny droplets that float in the air emitted by simple breathing. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about the first billion-dollar drug that's on the market. As we begin another year, we're going to have to make many choices in our lives. With the economy still struggling, we all have decisions to make relating to our health. My name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies. Healthcare is one of the many items that will be changing again this year. At Northlake Medical Pharmacies, we're striving to give you more for your dollar. We're still selling and renting durable medical equipment, including lift chairs, walkers, wheelchairs, and transport chairs. To help you with your healthcare decisions, we have qualified healthcare professionals that will be able to answer your questions. We would like to help you whether you need a prescription for a medication, a wheelchair or walker, an immunization to prevent a disease, or simply regular drugs, gifts, and sundries. Northlake Medical Pharmacies is the place to shop. Northlake Medical Pharmacies, with 2 locations for you, at Hill Road next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital, in the front of the Bruno Shop Store in Lakeport Boulevard.
The Mendocino County AIDS Viral Hepatitis Network presents the 31st Annual Event of the Heart on Saturday, February 10th from 5:30 to 10:30 p.m. at the Ukiah Valley Conference Center. This event benefits persons affected with HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis. Tickets can be purchased at the Mendocino Book Company or from MCA VHN at 148 Clara Avenue in Ukiah. For more info, call 462-1932 or visit them online at mcavhn.org.
Want to know what I like best about high school sports? I love watching my son run on the field. I love seeing him smile when he high-fives his teammates. I love seeing his eyes light up when his team scores a goal. I love the fact that since he's been playing high school sports, he's making better decisions. And I love knowing that high school sports have never been safer. Why? Because coaches have more information than they've ever had. Training techniques are more sophisticated, and equipment has never been more advanced. Playing high school sports isn't just safe. It's still the best way to give your teenager a healthy head start in life. And that's something I really love.
This message about the value of high school sports is presented by the California Interscholastic Federation and the California State Athletic Directors Association.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their Member of the Month, Tompkins Tax Consultants. John and Diane Tompkins have been serving Lake County since 1974 and have been a member of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce for 24 years. They provide services to many small businesses and individuals in Lake and Mendocino County. Their main office is located in Lucerne off Highway 20, and they also have a second satellite location in Lakeport at 576 Lakeport Boulevard. For more information, reach them at 274-1843.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All right, we're back.
Well, I'm sure you all wanted to stick around to hear about the new billion-dollar drug.
It cost $1 billion, or
It's going to cost about $1 billion.
Wow.
1978, a student pharmacist volunteered to go to the drugstore and get his mom a prescription. He said his mother gave him a $20 bill and told him he probably need another 10 to pick up the prescription. He said, "I'm sure, hope not." And his grandfather was in his mid-80s at the time, and the prescription sent to the pharmacy by his doctor, and Grandpa was telling him stories of his stomach ulcers being cut out. When he went to pay for the drug, it was, I think, $20.70 or something. But now the introduction of acid-suppressing drugs like the PPIs that we've talked about, the general surgeon's bread and butter, the gastrectomy. You walk into a pharmacy now and believe when you get your copay that it is going to be maybe in six figures. Tagamet was the first billion-dollar drug in the United States, if you can remember that. Tagamet was for ulcers. That's when we didn't know that it was an acid-blocking drug, and we didn't know that ulcers were caused by bacteria. So I think that's what got the ball rolling, where drug companies figured they could charge whatever the market would bear. And by 1988, there were three more drugs that got $1 billion for their drug companies. Capitan, which is a drug for high blood pressure, Vasotec, and Zantac, another H2 blocker. You can't help but see the parallel between the price increases and the institution of third-party payer programs. You know, you had to fill out these three-part carbon copy claim forms and ship them to the payers. Then the computers came to lighten the budget of the party billing. Then we actually kissed our profession goodbye at that time. The attitude that someone else is paying for your prescription seems to dampen the outage of ever-escalating prescription costs. In some cases, the fact that a $120 drug costs less than $50, and now many years so has changed, and we get these higher drugs. So as we celebrate 40 years of H2 receptors being on the market, which is Tagamet and the Zantac, the truth is we see $600 tubes of ointment for atopic dermatitis, $90,000 for a monthly treatment of hepatitis C, and the ones that we're giving our souls to, selling our houses for. But the first billion-dollar drug was actually back in 1977, and that was the drug Tagamet. You can go to any shelf in a pharmacy and find cimetidine, which is the generic form of Tagamet. You can go to get ranitidine, which is a generic form of an H2 blocker, again, Zantac. And you can get Prevacid, which is an H2 blocker. So these drugs are all available over the counter now for pennies, opposed to $1 billion that you had way back when. We are looking at prices now on, because of DIR fees. We filled a prescription yesterday that cost $1,200. We were paid $600, And in the past, 3 months from now, we will get a bill back from Caremark CVS for $750 they will charge us after we filled the prescription, reconciled it for $600, and then they're going to take back more money than it cost us originally. It cost us $1,200, they will take back $1,300. That should be illegal. You've heard me talk about this before, how unfair it is, and we're starting to get some attention from, not from my congressman, not Congressman Mike Thompson, but other congressmen are signing this bill that are telling us that we have been charged unfairly, and we ought to know when we fill that prescription if we are going to lose that much money on it. I have written the president, the vice president, both of our senators, and our representatives about the situation, and if it continues, pharmacies will no longer be in business anymore, and it will all be Amazon or mail order or somehow getting them to you in ways that we can't. So I just wanted to bring you up to date with this. It's getting more and more steam, more and more pharmacies are signing on, and more senators and congressmen are signing on to make the pharmacy benefit managers, who are the wealthiest people in this country, pay for these amenities that they are taking from the pharmacies. You can't expect anybody to have a business that has to operate their business at a loss, and they're as busy as they can be, and they're losing money. So not an unusual thing for me to be talking about here, but something that just continues to go on. Paul, have you seen the things on the internet and on the paper about teens eating laundry pods?
Yes.
And I just wondered how far this thing has gone. So I was, Consumers had a thing that said that laundry pods have made headlines in recent years because some children and dementia patients have mistaken them for brightly colored packets of candy, and they are very attractive.
Sure.
At least 8 deaths have been linked to these ingestions. Now some teenagers are posting videos of themselves putting pods in their mouth, and in some cases biting into them as part of an online dare called the Tide Pod Challenge.
Yes.
Now, we had the ICE thing, where we raised money for ALS.
Sure.
This is just stupidity. The emergency rooms have seen a large spike in the single-load laundry packet exposures among teenagers since those videos have been uploaded. Poison control centers around the country logged 39 cases of intentional laundry pod exposures among 13 and 9-year-olds in the first 2 weeks of this year. The intentional misuse of those products poses a real health. Google says it's actively removing the pod challenge from YouTube, and that its community guidelines prohibit content that's intended to encourage dangerous activities. Tide, which is the producer and the retail product, meantime recruited New England Patriots Rob Gronkowski to produce a public safety video warning people off the challenge. So I hope he doesn't show he's chewing on that before the Super Bowl. Consumer Reports called the manufacturers to make the pods safer, including making them look less candy-like. We've advised households with children younger than 6 or with anyone who has a cognitive impairment, and that means ability to do daily activities and remember to steer clear of them. Given how deadly the pods can be when ingested, very concerned that anyone would bite into one of those on purpose. And then you wonder, what is that? What is a laundry pod? Well, the exact blend of ingredients in any given laundry pod is proprietary, and that means they don't have to tell you what's in there. We know they generally consist of ethanol, which is ethyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and what chemists call long-chain polymers. What the rest of us know as soap. So the mix of chemicals is great at cleaning dirt, grime, food stains. But in their laundry pod concentration, those 3 ingredients alone, never mind what else is in there, because we don't know what it is, have the power to burn through the lining of your mouth and stomach. The film that encases the packet of highly concentrated and, when ingested, very toxic, very bad detergent is thin and specifically designed to dissolve in the water. If you've never used pods, you just throw them in the washer or put them in that tub up above, and they dissolve. That water is supposed to come from your washing machine, but it can also come from your mouth. So Don Huber, who's the Consumer Reports Director of Product Safety, said both your saliva, which is made up of water, and enzymes and gastric juices can break that film down in the matter of seconds. You would have to regurgitate the ball almost immediately to avoid injury. And given the physical size of those pods, it's not something that you can just vomit up easily and have it remain intact. When that film dissolves and the detergent is released, the ethanol, the ethyl alcohol, the peroxide, and the soap can burn, and not just a little. Toxicologists, which are people who delve in poisons, the study of what poisons do to your system, describe those burns as caustic, meaning they can literally eat away at tissues that make up your gums and inner cheeks. The same will happen to your esophagus, which is how food gets into your stomach, the stomach, and other parts of your gastrointestinal tract, as the ingredients make their way through your digestive system. The intense discomfort of internal destruction is likely to induce a lot of vomiting, so much that you run the risk of aspirating that vomit, meaning you could literally breathe it into your lungs. It will also cause severe explosive diarrhea. Stool softener, the medication they give people who have trouble going to the bathroom, is also made up of long-chain polymers, but it's not that explosive. Ingesting a single laundry pod would be something like the equivalent of taking a whole bottle of stool softeners. Without medical attention, your lungs start to fill with fluid, which will in turn make it difficult for you to breathe, and eventually send you into respiratory arrest. At the same time, the portions of the laundry pod that have made their way into your stomach and GI tract can migrate to your bloodstream, vital organs, and central nervous system, including your brain. From there, it can be a short path to seizures, coma, and eventually death. There's no hard, fast rule for how quickly this will run its course, but such deaths tend to be relatively quick. It's a direct toxic effect on the central nervous system. This isn't a typical product. This is a highly toxic product. Most of the people who died from accidentally ingesting laundry pods died within hours to days. Procter & Gamble, the make of leading brand laundry pods, including the Tide Pods, says its product should be used only to clean clothes and never be ingested, even as a joke. Do you use those, Paul? I mean, I know you do a lot of laundry.
We've gone back and forth. But, we don't get the ones that are the bright colored ones. Usually we get like the Arm & Hammer ones, and it's just like dry detergent in a thing that dissolves, you know what I mean? But I've seen the bright ones, obviously I've been in the store and seen them. But
I can't imagine anybody being that stupid.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
But I can't imagine people sniffing paint or glue, or I mean, your brain just.
But it's a different purpose than somebody who would sniff glue to get high. These are kids that are doing it because they want to look cool on social media.
Right.
It's a total different motivation behind it, and for somebody who has a young child who's 9 going on 10, and the only thing that he wants to do is be on YouTube, and that whole thing. It's very worrisome.
Well, that's social pressure.
Yeah.
To be one of the people. This guy did it, and he's alive, so why can't I do it, and I'm alive?
Yeah. And people will like me. Click the likes, or or whatever it is, and it's just a different age, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's not the first online challenge that has had bad results, because I think you did a piece a while ago about the cinnamon challenge.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing.
Well, if you think that you don't know anybody that's doing this, you're wrong, because I have 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. I just found out that a brilliant grandchild of mine is a straight-A student, very varsity-type volleyball player, is vaping.
Oh, boy.
They
Yeah.
they allow vaping in the schools.
Oh, do they?
And he got caught vaping, and he said it's not toxic, it's not anything that's, it's just cool to do it. And I said,
Huh.
why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's his whole life, and he got expelled from school or had to go to the office or something because of doing that. And
Bill, I
he
think we
said,
got a call.
okay.
Hello? Are you there? Hold on, let's see if we can get you on here now. Let's see, 10-2, and, you know, can you call us back at 263-5254? Okay, thank you. You know, I noticed this earlier this week that line has got an echo on it, so I got to get the repair people out here, so hopefully they'll call right back on 54. But yeah, the vaping thing is, you know, you see the TV ads on TV all the time.
Yeah. I
You
said, I mean, this guy is as straight as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's our call right
Okay.
there. Let's see. Good morning. You're on Health Talk. Can you hear us? Are you there?
I didn't know I was going to get on Health Talk. I've been trying to get a hold of Paul Thomas.
Oh, well, that's me. But we're right in the middle of a show on Health Talk. Did you want to talk to Bill?
So, when's the show over with?
Why don't you give me a call back around, I don't know, 10:15 or so, or 11:15, sorry.
Okay, I'll call you back, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well,
want to sell a tractor?
I don't know.
But anyway, I want to remind everybody that till we get that call that we're still giving flu shots. We're still delivering. We're going to have a big rainstorm supposedly
Yeah,
this week.
tonight, right? Isn't it supposed to roll through tonight? And
Yeah.
Snow
I mean,
level, 2,500 feet, so.
Yeah, of course it never happens.
It never
they tell us
happens,
that.
I
I mean, we could go sledding in mud probably. But,
And then they say no rain in the forecast after that. So
Yeah.
this has been a very different year than last year.
yeah, it certainly has been. But anyway.
So are we going to do a let's see, next week are we doing a Super Bowl show or 'cause isn't that on the let's see the 4th, I think?
Yeah, it's a week
Yeah.
from Sunday. isn't
Yeah,
it?
week from Sunday. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, we shall.
We shall do a Super Bowl show.
It was very, yeah.
Of course, I'm not a fan of any of the teams in it.
Well, you know, I kind of am for Philadelphia.
for Philadelphia, just so that the Patriots don't win another one.
Yeah,
Me
yeah.
too.
So
Yeah.
if I saw Howie Long's son Chris, Terry Bradford was interviewing him last weekend after the game, and he had on a wolf's head or something, and Bradshaw was talking about how football had changed from the time that he had been playing to the way it is right now. So, but.
Are you guys doing a party?
Oh yes, it's
Yeah.
always my wife's sorority.
Yeah, sorority does a get together.
In a couple minutes, there's a popular morning sickness drug that now the Food and Drug Administration said is ineffective. It's the only drug that the FDA has licensed for morning sickness, and it's very expensive. And they did some tests on it in Canada. It's called Dicligus, and it's the only drug approved for treatment of morning sickness in pregnancy. It's been prescribed to 33 million women worldwide, and they decided to check into the drug to see why it was effective, and it was recommended as a first-line medication for nausea and vomiting during pregnancy, probably because there aren't any others. When they looked at the practice guidelines and recommended the medication, they didn't cite any supporting studies, so they tried to find out on the basis of the recommendations, and it was surprisingly difficult to obtain information about this commonly prescribed drug. So that should be a hint right away when you look at these things. As we always talk about drugs, we take double-blind studies and make sure that there was a large group of people involved, and that their measuring system was okay. Their literature says that it was significantly better than the placebo, but while the review by the FDA was very thorough, it didn't address the point that the 3-point difference between the drugs was not found in the trial. And then they wondered if the placebo was just as good a drug. In that trial, women given a placebo had a large improvement in symptoms over 2 weeks. By the end of the 2-week trial, women given a placebo had symptom scores of around 4, and the lowest possible score is 3. So the results indicate that no studied treatment could have a substantial benefit over the placebo. For those of you who don't know what a placebo is, it's a drug that looks like the drug, same color, same size, same form, and you don't know whether you're taking the real medication or the placebo. So when they do a study, the people don't know what they're getting. They think they're getting, everybody thinks they're getting the regular medication. So when this one came out, they found out that the information wasn't as great as what they had thought, but they put it on the market anyway. And we've talked to you many times about the study that was done with L-thyroxone and Synthroid. And the L-thyroxone, which is the generic equivalent of Synthroid, came out as much less expensive and a much higher blood level than the brand name product did. And they didn't publish that because they were afraid the sales would go down, because the people that ordered the experiment were the people that manufactured the brand name, and they didn't want anything to happen. Sneezing. Paul, do you sneeze?
Only when I have to.
Then you let it go?
I typically try to hold it in, but, or I'll sneeze into my arm or something like that. But I know that it's not good to hold it in.
No, a guy ruptured his throat after pinching his nose and shutting his mouth.
I never go that far.
When he felt one coming on. And so when I broke my ribs, I couldn't sneeze. I had to hold it. So you don't ever want to hold it, a forceful sneeze, because, some people can pop their neck, have some bilateral neck swelling, can have trouble swallowing and speaking. So not a good thing. This guy was hospitalized to prevent a deep neck infection, had to be fed by using a tube to allow his esophagus to heal. Made a full recovery after 7 days, but holding a sneeze by blocking your nostrils and mouth is a dangerous maneuver and should be avoided, as many lead to numerous complications. Well, we're going to have to leave you shortly, and sorry we couldn't connect with our listener, but maybe next week, and we'll give you the right phone number so you can connect with us.
Yeah, or we'll get the one that's weird fixed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I want to remind you that we're still doing flu shots, doing pneumonia shots. If you haven't got your pneumonia shots, and I was amazed at the people that said they hadn't gotten any pneumonia shots, get to it. And the new shingle shot, Shing RX, hopefully will be on the market. It's on the market now, but hopefully an insurance will pay. I'd like to remind you that we're North Lake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Give us a call there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Give us a call there at 263-1328. Just don't forget, next month we're going to start syncing your medicines at North Lake Medical Pharmacy.
And we'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. right here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX Lakeport.